good. After a couple of days, we were transported to Sosnovitz.
We're with Walter Spear in New York City, and this is tape number 3.
We came to Sosnovitz, which was in Oberschlesien. If you ask me how we got there, I don't remember. All I know is that we came there and we saw the barracks empty. We said, is it a new camp? Is it an old camp? We had nobody to talk. We didn't know. After a while, they called us out like what you would call a road call, and we lined up. And we saw another group coming in. Little did we know that that was another shift, who worked in a Kanonenfabrik. There were 2 shifts. I think it was 12 hours. I'm not sure, because we had no watch, we had no way of telling. One came and the other one left. We shared the same barracks. We never slept in the same barracks. And we were working in a Kanonenfabrik. That means we were making cannons. And there were Polish kapos. If you think the Germans were bad, they were 10 times worse. We had a Polish capo who had he had like a half an arm, and his elbow came to a point, and he was so strong in that elbow. He used to hit you. You had to put the cannon into the fire, and you had to leave him in a certain time and pull him out. And if you weren't fast enough, he used to hit you, push you, anything. And that SS-man Wolf was with us. Why he got a liking to me till today, it's a mystery. And he used to say, do the best you can. Do the best. Don't talk. Don't talk back. Don't talk back. And that Capo Jack Youngler, to some of the inmates you would call, he used to speak Polish, which I didn't understand. I picked up a few words. And we worked. We had no idea how the war is going or what's going on in the outside world. Once in a while, that SS man used to say, there were very few German Jews. I don't think there were, very few. And he used to say in German to me, sei stark, Junge, be strong, boy, be strong, boy. No idea, I couldn't ask him what the world situation was. We were blank, completely blank. We heard planes, but we didn't know if there were, what planes there were, American, Russians, Germans, we had no idea. Because either we were in the barracks or we were in the factory working. One day, we didn't go to work, and the other shift came home, and we were all lined up, and we started to walk. Where we walked to, nobody knew. Food, it was winter, it was cold. Clothes we didn't have. We had the concentration camp uniforms with our number on. Yellow was Jewish, red was political, and mostly wore yellow with the number. And we walked, and by that time we saw a lot of American and Canadian planes. I think we left Sosnowitz in the midwinter with a couple of thousand Jews. And we kept on walking. And Jews, we used to fall down on the side for hunger, weakness, sickness, we don't know. I was 15, 16. At night, we used to go in barns, in small towns, barns like on a farm. And whenever that SS man and Jack saw me, he used to say, "Don't sleep, don't sleep." If we went into a barn, every day was less and less and less. Either they froze to death or they were too weak to march on. Then, after 2 or 3 days, or a little longer, we saw German tanks, German cars laying on the side road. And that SS man passing by used to say, "The Russians are in back of us. It's not long anymore." And we had hopes. We gave each other hope that we would make it. And like I said earlier, we were a couple of boys who stuck together. If one of them fell asleep, we used to massage him and wake him up. Or if I fell asleep, they did the same to me. How we survived, how we made it, I don't remember. Sometimes I wake up, or I say to myself, how did I do it? A lot of times, while years back, I became active in the synagogue, come a little bit off the subject, and one man came to me and says, I get up early in the morning, and he says to me, how can you go to a meeting and get up so early in the morning? And I said to him, how did I survive the march from Sosnowitz to Mauthausen? I didn't have to wear clothes, I didn't have the shoes, I didn't have a full belly. We were hungry, we were starved, We were miserable. But God helped us. And we survived day by day. After a couple of, I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks, we marched. Every day when we turned around, we saw the line getting shorter and shorter. Or as we walked, we saw other concentration camps, prisoners lying on the side. We wouldn't dare look because they were riding on cars or motorcycles, and they used to say, "Weiter, weiter, weiter." And then one man says, "Eat the snow. The snow is good for you." Even so, it helps you, it's nourishing. We ate snow. Then when we used to go into the barns, we ate anything what came across. We used to look for carrots or whatever they gave to the cows. We used to dig up and we ate. We landed into Graz. Out of over 3,000 people, maybe we came there with 300. By that time, it was in the early spring. We came into the famous Killer Mauthausen. We were there like when we got there, that was known for another death camp, but not in gas chamber, but a labor camp. And none of us would have survived there because we were too weak, we couldn't work. We came on top of the mountains and we saw the planes flying and we saw the bombs going down in, we didn't know at the time, in Austria it was Wien, Linz, Graz, all those towns. And we heard the SS saying to us, if you think you get out, we're gonna kill you all before any of the enemies come in here. We're gonna kill you all, nobody's gonna survive. And we were walking in circles at that time. Thank God we never went to work in Mauthausen. I never went to work there because I never would have made it. Never. Because too weak to pick up a shovel. And I walked around and there were like gates in between. Let's say there were 500 in a camp, and we kept on surrounding. And on top there were the SS. And I heard a man yelling from the other camp, "Walder?" I said, "Yeah." And it was a fellow by the name of Carlotto Hertz. And he says to me, "I saw your brother." I had no recollection, no idea where he was, if he was alive in all that time. And I said to him, "And your brother is here. I saw him yesterday." And they saw us talking, and they yelled, "White again." That means keep on marching and marching. I never saw Carlotto Herz again. But again, I have a little bit more kaiches to hear a news that my brother is alive or was alive. A couple of days later, we were liberated by the 11th Infantry, American Army, on a bright, shiny day. Before I did anything else, with another fella, I looked for that SS man Wolf. The Americans, even inmates, survivors, killed the SS men, or the SS men took their uniforms off and they put on concentration camps uniforms to throw them off. We took that SS man and we went to the Americans and we said, he's not an SS man, he's a friend of ours. And at that time, they gave him a certificate that he had nothing to do as a Nazi. And believe me, he will deserved it. But unfortunately, young Lechak never made it. He died hours before the liberation, and he helped us. I said so many times, I want to go with my children to Mauthausen. And one of the things I want to do is look for Jack's grave, because I think I could find it blindfolded, because he saved my life with the SS man. The Americans came. Again, we were stupid. We didn't know what went on in the world. We heard that thousands and thousands of people, Jews, got killed, and we knew it. We came from Auschwitz, what actually Birkenau. We saw it, we heard it. And coming back to Birkenau, to Auschwitz, after my children got married and they had children, and I'm very proud of my family. Like I said, when I say children, I mean my sons, my daughter-in-laws, they're my children, and my grandchildren. I like to play cards. And we were at the Concord over Shavuos or Sukkot, I don't remember what holiday. And I was playing cards. And my daughter-in-law says, "Don't you want to see your grandchildren swim in the pool," which was an indoor pool? I stopped playing cards and I went to the pool. But when I heard the echo of the pool, I saw Birkenau, all the people going into the gas chamber screaming. I just walked out. I couldn't bear it till today. I cannot go into Auschwitz or anything with high windows because that's how the gas chambers were built. I can't stand the noise, the echo, because I heard it. People don't understand. Thank God they shouldn't understand. But those who were in it, they will understand, because this is the most terrible, terrible thing. And I said once, when I was interviewed, to the Stern, to the German magazine, which was a disgrace, I said, if the Holocaust ever should come back, and I should be alive, I would do anything and give all the money to bomb them out, because before any Jew should go through it, something like that again, because people don't know till today. And I thought it would get better, but it doesn't. It gets worse. I'm not blaming my children for that I can't take it, but it's me. Coming back to the liberation, we were weak. We tried to contact some people, find out who survived, what's going on in the world. Nobody could say anything to us. But I remember my father's words. The last words was, go back to your hometown and be proud of your name. And that's why you see outside the car which beer on it, because that was my father's wish. And I'm proud of it. Now, if it was after a week or I don't remember, a Captain Levy who liberated to us came to me and to others and says, do you have any family in other countries? So I said, yes, I have a sister and a brother who went with the Jugendallee, with the children's transport to England. So he says, write him a note and I will see that it goes in the proper channels. And I wrote, I'm looking for my brother Julius, my brother Alfred, and my sister Edith Speer. And my sister found it, which I found out later on. There's a German Jewish paper, the Aufbau, and one of the women she worked with in a knitting factory said to my sister one morning, you know, there's a Walter Speer looking for some brothers and sisters, which I found out afterwards, that he's alive and he's looking for you. So that Captain Levy, a couple of days later, or hours later, said, look, we gotta pull out tomorrow or the next day, and the Russians will take over. I make a suggestion that you go into Germany, go into the Americans. I make sure that you go into Germany, unless you want to stay in with the Russians. At that point, again, we had no knowledge, or we had no idea who is better, the Russians or the Germans or the Americans. I didn't know. So I said, what do you say? So he says, go to Germany. So I said, yes, my father told us that we should go back to our hometown. Now, we had no identification, and he gave me a note. What happened to it, I don't know. He drove us into Wien, us, he said, 2 more boys, drove us into Wien. You couldn't be choosy what train to take or what transportation. He took us on an open car on a railroad which goes into Germany. And we drove, as it turned out, it was a coal wagon. And I was as black as an ace of spade. How long it took, I don't remember. And I landed in München with whatever I had on me. I still saw the smoke coming out of the buildings, and I went into the toilet, public toilet, to wash up, normal procedure. Took off my clothes, threw it over what they call the stalls. I washed. I was finished washing. I wanted to put my clothes on. My clothes were gone. I was standing there, nothing. What am I going to do now? I waited till somebody else did the same thing, took his clothes and put it on and walked out. Walked out. And I went, one official stopped me and he says in German, where you going, and this and yet. And I showed him the piece of paper what that captain gave me, liberation from a TP camp. Where you going? I said, to Rauschholzhausen. Where is that? And I told him. So I went on a train, on a regular train. How long? I don't remember. Was sitting in a corner, still scared because we weren't used to be free. We thought that the SS is still there, even so we saw Americans, English, French soldiers, but you still were frightened. We drove the train, and I landed in Marbusch an der Lahn, where I was born, about, I think it's 8 or 10 kilometers, I would say about 5 miles from my hometown. And I got off, and you gotta realize these are all small towns, no big cities, everything is in uproar. I got off, and I remember that there was a railroad going once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And that was early in the morning, going to our nearest town, which was only 1 mile away.
Beer in New York City, and this is tape number 4.
I went to that Marburg an der Lahn had 2 railroad stations, Ost and West. And I went to the Ostbahnhof and I said to the man, a little old man, he says to me, I said to him, when is the next train going to Madorf, which is the neighboring town to Rauscholzhausen? Our town didn't have a railroad. And the way he looked at me, he said to me, you're a Judejung, that means you're a Jewish boy. I said, yes. A couple of days ago, there came also a Jewish boy, a Judejung. And I knew it was my brother, because there were no other boys in our hometown. And I said, and he said to me, you missed the morning train. The next train is at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said to myself, I'm not going to wait till the afternoon. As little as I was, I knew my way, and I start walking. And the first town I came to, I saw a bicycle, and I took the bicycle, and I took off. I went on the road to my hometown. I saw some people, I didn't stop, I just kept on riding and riding. And I went to my hometown, to my parents' house, and looking for my brother. And there were Gentiles living in the house. And they said to me, your brother is by your former, we had like a maid, by the sister. And the small town, I knew exactly where that was. I don't know if I took the bicycle or if I ran. And when Lisbeth saw me, she screamed, Walter. And I said, where is Martin? And that was in the morning. And Martin was still sleeping, and I opened up his eyes. And what shall I tell you? That's how I found my brother Martin. And again, the two of us, we became stronger. We were not alone. We were two. Two is better than one. And there were Gentiles living in our house. And since my father never sold the house, my parents, I should say, we chased them out and we moved back to our house. And we tried to put the pieces together, which was very hard. Then my brother said that Friedel, who I mentioned earlier, my father cried when his cousin Judah left for America. His son Friedel, who left earlier to the United States, was in the English army, but was stationed in Bad Nauheim. And a couple of days later, on a Sunday, he came to visit us, and he brought us clothes and this, and it was very good. And don't forget, money we didn't have. And we more or less kept to ourselves. With all the Jews who used to live in the neighboring towns, there was no Jew, except there was about 20 minutes away, there was another young fella, Werner Schamburg, who lives in Detroit now, who then we saw, and we tried to put the pieces together, which was very difficult, because we use for the Germans we didn't have, except those few who really were good to us. And we knew who was good and who was bad, and we only associated with the ones who really was good. And after a while, the only survivor from our town was Sarah Mendel, who survived Theresienstadt. My brother knew that she survived because he was liberated in Theresienstadt. And she came back, and we went to eat there. We had I don't know if we had breakfast there, but she used to cook for us. And her husband had a little butcher shop, but in Europe, a butcher shop, you also did your own killing. For you did everything from soup to nuts. And we were sitting in the kitchen, and all of a sudden we saw somebody on a wagon with 2 cows, a Nazi, going into the fields, who came back from the war. And we were, you can't blame when you saw thousands of people being killed and die, that you had a hate. And anybody who says who was right away a gentleman after the war or religious after the war, personally I think he's lying, because you were so submerged till you get your life into order. And I look at my brother, and my brother looks at me, and there's that Nazi with his daughter going into the field, who I never forget, on a Tisha B'Av, we at home only fasted to have a day on Tisha B'Av. This I remember. And it was a hot day, and my mother, Selig, I never forget, she had fresh potatoes that was on the, Tisha B'Av, we lived in a small town, and scrambled eggs, and my father wanted to start and eat. Have a day fast. If I fasted, I gotta lie to you, I don't remember. And I saw, we had a couple of steps into our house, I saw that guy hitting my father, who we saw after the war going by. And I wanted to go into Mrs. Mendel store and take a cleaver. I wanted to kill him. I admit, I wanted to kill him. And Mrs. Mendel said, "Schlagen, hitting, yes, but no killing. You leave the cleaver here." My brother and I, we went out. I think at that time we had somebody else, another survivor with us. And we beat him up. We beat him up, but we didn't kill him. And till today, I'm thankful for Mrs. Mendel I didn't kill him, because I didn't want to have it on my conscience. And we started our pieces put together. My brother started my father's business, cattle business. And I went with Mrs. Mendel together in her business. But we knew we didn't want to stay in Germany because we had no love for it. We wanted to get out. And Friedel Rilf, who was the soldier, his sister, Selma Meyer, who had a farm upstate, sent us an affidavit. Even so, actually, we didn't need it because they hired us and you got a number and you could get out. And we applied, and in 1946, I don't know, middle of June, my brother and I left Germany to the United States. But I must say, till today, I don't know if we were stupid or what. I feel guilty that I left that woman alone there, because she was the only survivor. I don't know if she would have gone, but we left her. And Martin and I, we came here in 1946 under Marine purge. I remember we landed on we docked on a Saturday. And by that time, my sister picked us up, and Friedel Rilf picked us up, who we saw in the American Army. And we stayed for a while with my sister. She had a small 3-bedroom apartment. She was married. We met her husband. We had to make a living. Money we didn't have. In the beginning, when we were here, despite how bad it was in Germany, I must say with a clear conscience, even after so many years, if there would have been a bridge across, we would have gone back to Germany. Hard to understand, because our people, some of them weren't very nice. I started in a machine shop and started to work for 75 cents an hour. True, at that time, food was not expensive. After a while, we moved out by my sister. My brother moved with Friedel Rilf, and I moved in with another couple. I found a room there, and it was not easy. We came from an Orthodox home. that time, I worked Saturday mornings. No, wait a minute, not yet. I worked in the machine shop, and I had an uncle who was in the wholesale meat business. And he came to visit us, and he says, there is the OPA, I don't know if you remember that was still rationing here, there wasn't enough meat around, and he says, soon as I get enough meat, I take one of yours. I can't take two, but I take one. At that time, my brother was making $1 an hour, and I was making 75 cents an hour. He contacted us and he says, I take one of yours. I pay you $1 an hour. My brother was making $1. I was making 75. So I started in a wholesale butchery in Brooklyn. We worked, my brother worked, we saw each other. And after we belonged to a survivors group who met at Hotel Marseille, which was on 103rd Street and Broadway, corner Broadway, on the west side of Broadway, and we met there. And one day, I see a fella who I knew from camp, and he says, Walter, I live in California. Come with me, it's an easier living. I had no ties here, I had no money. My brother was standing in the other corner, and I said to Martin, I'm going to California tomorrow. What are you, crazy? You leave me alone? The moment he said, you leave me alone, I didn't go. I said, no, you go back without you. I stay here. I said earlier, God was miserable to me and to my brother in the youth, but thank God he made up later on in life. I started to work. I worked myself up. I made more money and more money. Then I met my wife Carla at, I think she was 15 and a half. I was at a Sweet 16's party. We're talking about snowstorm in 1947. We had a big snowstorm. She lived 161st, I lived 162nd Street. We walked up to the Fort Ryan Park in the big snowstorm, and we became friendly. We saw seeing each other, and life has changed. I was hooked up with two more boys who were also in camp, and the mother survived. I lived in I had a room, and the boys with the mother had a big apartment, and we moved in there. It was like a new beginning for us. We were part of a family. We ate together. We didn't have to go out to eat. We did the shopping. The woman cooked. We paid for room and board. The woman was to us like a mother. She treated us like her own children. Unfortunately, the woman passed away, and we were constantly in touch. And till this day, we are like brothers with those two boys. We talk to each other regular. We see each other. Their simcha is our simcha. Their sadness is our sadness. Why we are so close? Because we had the same upbringing. We had the same background. And coming back to the Herman boys, they had an older brother. And all of a sudden, he was strong as an ox, also a survivor. He got ill. How little did we know about cancer. And he was in the medical center, and the doctor said he didn't know who are really the brothers are. My brother and I and his real two brothers were all at his bedside. And the doctor says to the mother, "Go home, your son is very sick." And she went home. And even so, we were making a living, but we didn't have much money. And there was a rabbi in the neighborhood who some people didn't like him. To us, he was a mensch. He was a good man. I said to him, "Rabbi Koppel, who's going to pay for all that?" He says, "Don't worry. I take care of it." And the boy passed away. He took care of the hospital. How, I don't know. But he paid the funeral. A lot of people didn't like him. And again, we became so close that it was unbelievable because, number one, we had an elderly woman love us like a mother because we didn't know what it was. And we appreciate it. And I kept dating my wife. And then I realized that the wholesale business is no future. I had to do something else. I started to go work in the afternoons into retail stores, work there. People took advantage of you. Like sometimes I pass by a street and I say to my wife, "Now, this guy gave me a tryout. That time they didn't have no electric bandsaws or what. Do that, they let you work for half an hour. You're not fast enough. They took advantage of you." And I started to work. I met my wife, we became steady, we got engaged, we got married. We're married 44 years, I hope I'm right by the date. And we had children. And the best thing what happened to me, two things. Number one, that I met my wife, and my children started out in public school, which we didn't like. But it was a lot of money. And when my oldest was born, actually, I went into business myself. That was 40 years ago. I went in partners, and I went into a kosher butcher. And after 40 years, I'm still in the same spot. And what happened to my children, that was a school strike, a public school strike. And they were out of school, and we said, that's supposed to be that way. Now, thank God, we can afford a little bit. We send them to yeshiva. And both our children, from then on, went to yeshiva. Like I said, it was not, at least I came from an Orthodox home, and so did my wife, but we were not always 100%. And the day we sent them to yeshiva, we made a complete turnaround. Even so, even when the children were small, they never drove on a Shabbos. We observed the Shabbos, but not to 100%. And we made a complete turnaround. And thank God, we steered them in the right direction. And my wife and I are very proud of it.
You mentioned being in the pool with your grandson. Are there other ways in which this experience manifests itself in your daily life?
A lot of times. A lot of times. A lot of times. I heard just the other day, like I said, I'm active in the community. I heard a man got off the bus. Last Tuesday was a snowy day, and they rushed him into the hospital. Even so, last night we were invited to a 70th birthday party out in Queens in one of the kosher Chinese restaurants. I can't think of the name now. And I said to Carla, let's visit Yochel Frankel first. When I walked in there and I saw him laying there, bald-headed man, older than me, I said to myself, that reminds me like a man in a barrack. So you constantly get your flashbacks, constantly. Like a lot of times, I say to myself, when my parents and other Jews could see that Judaism didn't go under, that Judaism is still alive and still powerful, if they could see it, I wouldn't give up my children or my grandchildren or my wife, but I would give them all the money in the world, whatever I have, if they could see